Um, this isn't going to be a newspaper review, but rather something I've observed from a newspaper I buy often, which is the Eye. Um, the Eye is a relatively new national newspaper, launched in 2010, relatively new compared to most of our big dailies. And I admit it's probably the paper I buy most. There's a few reasons for that. Number one, it's relatively cheap compared to other so-called quality newspapers. It's not a tabloid. It's a quality newspaper in the sense that it tends to avoid sensationalism and it tends to avoid the style of reporting that is traditionally associated with, to give them the correct title, the Red Top Press. It was designed actually for convenience for people commuting into London and other big cities because its format is quite easy to read. Um, I also found that for the most part, or I shouldn't say the most part, but for a reasonable part, my own centrist opinions on things and the Eye's broadly centrist outlook, it's something I align with, and it is a fact that people buy newspapers that they broadly agree with. Having said that, I want to discuss briefly what I consider to be blatant bias in the Eye when it comes to the issue of feminism, anything to do with feminism. Now, I have to make an important caveat with this. To be fair to the Eye, it is a left-wing paper. Of that, there is no doubt. It's liberal left, basically. It's on the political left, and that's clear from most of its editorials and the sort of people who read it, and so on. However, it is a bit more to the centre, for example, than the Guardian. Now, the Guardian is solid left. There's no question about that. The Eye, to be fair to them, they will offer different viewpoints. I, for example, saw an article in the Eye recently that was pro fox hunting, and that wasn't just an opinion piece. That wasn't just a public letter. That was actually an alternative viewpoint. So, to be fair to the Eye, they do try to put across the alternative view on most issues, not on feminism. And my basis for this claim is as follows. During this election cycle, they have been promoting the Women's Equality Party as a major political party, or at least a significant political party. And you really do have to ask yourself why. Now, they may have been basing that on the fact that the Women's Equality Party has supposedly 65,000 members, which is quite a lot for a new party. That I concede. I'll just say from the outset, I am not a fan of the Women's Equality Party. I think they're divisive. I think any party that focuses only on one demographic is divisive by nature. Um, I posted a few questions on their page. I wasn't satisfied with the answers. I believe they are driven basically by telling women that they're victims and telling men that they are the oppressors. They'll deny that, of course, but they are a feminist party with a feminist agenda. Simple as that. Now, the Eye has been featuring them along with all the other parties that actually have a record of getting some MPs. Even the smaller parties, um, they're lining up the Women's Equality Party to be on par with other minor parties. The reality is the Women's Equality Party has no representation at all, not even any councillor. Now, the Greens I don't agree with, but I recognise at least they do have an elected MP and they have councillors. Um, but the Women's Equality Party, in this election, they gained 3,580 votes. 3,580 votes in an electorate of 47 million. That's incredible. I mean, that actually puts them as the second smallest party in this election. The only party that was smaller is something called the Unionist Voice or whatever. I assume that's a minor party in Northern Ireland. I'm not sure. Um, but the point is, if they've got 65,000 members, they got 3,580 votes. That indicates even most of their members are not voting for them. What does that tell you? It tells you that they're just not a major political force. Now, people will contend, oh, but they're a new party. Okay, it takes parties time to grow. But the point is, why is I presenting them as a major party? Virtually every single edition that I have got of the Eye, focusing on the general election, has had at least one article about the Women's Equality Party. In their panorama, in their diagram of party policies, they included the Women's Equality Party with all the big parties: the Conservatives, Labour, Liberal Democrats, SNP, Greens, UKIP. And yet, why? They've done nothing to show that they deserve to be given that sort of attention. Um, and I don't think they should be, because I believe that they're a divisive party. And here's the other bone I have to pick with the eye. Whenever it comes to issues of feminism, they refuse. They refuse to print any sort of comments that are critical. Now, I have had articles published, excuse me, I've had letters, I shouldn't say articles, I've had letters published in the Eye before. Um, and I have seen letters that are critical of some of the Eye's positions. So I'm not going to say that they're completely intolerant of different views. However, on the issue of feminism, yes, I would say that they're intolerant and they do not allow dissenting views. Um, that's the discretion of the editor. But the point I would make is they have this focus on making the point that they are independent. It isn't very independent if you're given entirely favourable treatment of one political party, not showing any negative comments whatsoever about that party, and yet you're allowing negative comments about pretty much all the other parties. So that indicates to me that the Eye has vested interests here. I'm not suggesting corruption, but I'm suggesting that they are pushing a feminist agenda by promoting the Women's Equality Party. It's almost like they're acting as a PR agent for them. And yeah, I admit it annoys me because I believe the Women's Equality Party is fundamentally sexist. It's a party that is gender centric. Um, Despite their claims that they're not anti male, the point is they are a party that is only focusing on half the population. Sophie Walker arrogantly thought she could fly into Shipley solely because she had a personal grudge against the incumbent there. He got re elected anyway. Um, to me, that really says it all. She wasn't interested in local concerns in Shipley. She just wanted to go in there to stand against Philip Davies because he's a well-known men's rights. He speaks out in men's rights issues. I know he's a controversial MP. I certainly wouldn't endorse Philip Davies in other areas. Um, but the point is, she only wanted to challenge him because of her personal grudge against him. That was it. As far as I know, she was born in Glasgow. She has connections to Blackpool and London. As far as I know, she has no connections with Shipley directly. Um, I'm not one of these people that says an MP. I don't actually believe that an MP has to have lived their entire life in a seat to represent it. But the point is, she was going there purely for her personal grudge against Philip Davies. That to me demonstrates the mindset of the Women's Equality Party. Um, and the Eye simply refuses to publish. I've tried several times to send letters. They haven't published any of mine. And these aren't wild rants. I construct my letters diplomatically. Um, it isn't just about me, it's not an ego thing. If they were publishing other letters that were critical of the Women's Equality Party, then fair enough. But they just won't do it. And that's true of any sort of feminist article at all. It's the same whenever they have an article about Jess Phillips, the controversial Birmingham Yardley MP, who has made sexist comments about men. They will not publish any letters that are critical of Jess Phillips, and yet there are plenty of people that are very critical of Jess Phillips. So this indicates to me that the Eye is blatantly pushing a feminist agenda, and this is different from other issues, whether it be the EU or crime or pretty much every other issue. They're a lot more open minded and they will show the other side. But when it comes to feminism, the Eye is incredibly um, they simply will not show the other viewpoints, and it does irritate me because otherwise it's a paper I quite like. Certainly, I wouldn't agree with all their editorials. I wouldn't overall describe myself as left leaning as the Eye is, but I would also add that the Eye is not as left wing as the Guardian. At this point, you cannot hold up a very, very, very small political party as being kind of mainstream when they clearly aren't, and then say that you are independent. Because this indicates to me that they are trying actively to promote the Women's Equality Party. almost like they are acting as PR agents for them. Why? Okay, so let me know your thoughts, and I just think I think it's misguided. I think it's bad journalism. If you're going to continuously promote the Women's Equality Party, then allow dissenting views.